coming near to listen to Jesus. The Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Give me the share of the inheritance that will belong to me.' So he divided his assets between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant region, and there he squandered his wealth in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that region, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that region, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, but here I am dying of hunger? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found,' and they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and as he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called on one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you. I have never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me even a young goat so I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your assets with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.' This is our story. Thanks be to God."
Thanks, Chris. Christ is risen. If you are just joining us, this spring at Wellington Square, we're doing what people like all over the world are doing, which is pretty rad when you think about it. There are millions of Christians around the earth who this season are exploring what Easter and resurrection mean. They're talking about, why do these things matter? We're looking at how, if resurrection does declare to us that this is God's world and God is not finished with it yet, that God is still at work redeeming and restoring and transforming it, we're asking, what does that then mean for us and how we live and move and have our being? What does that then mean for how we live? Because that's what we do with truths, right? Whenever we get a truth, our job is to listen to what that truth says about the world, but then we're supposed to think about, okay, then how does that then shape how I live and move and have my being? How does that change how I see others, how I see myself, how I see the universe? How does that change how I understand what it means to be human and alive in the world? Because the reality is, if you've been doing church long enough, especially here, you've begun to pick up on the fact that, like, the Bible and Jesus doesn't really give us answers. It doesn't really give us certainty. It doesn't really give us a clear-cut direction, step-by-step map for how to be human. But rather, it gives us values. It gives us wisdom. It gives us understanding. And our job is to take all those things and figure out, rather messily, how to be human and alive in the world, how to be people of integrity, how to actually live out our faith. Because this is why we say it's not about directions, it's about direction. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. It's not about being right, but rather getting it right. And it shifts the whole concept of faith and spirituality from perfection and certainty and being rooted in one single thing over here to, oh, it's about a journey. It's about death and resurrection and this constant ebb and flow of trying to figure it out and leaning on God's grace to pick us up when we mess up, when we get it wrong, and keep trying again. And so this season, we're talking about Easter. And how does that shape all of that and help us learn how to be human? And so today, what I want to do is use a story that we just heard to get at a truth that I think can help us answer a question that I know we've all asked in one way, shape, or form. We've already talked about it in some ways. And I think it's a question that we've begun to ask more and more, especially since COVID. But probably we've been asking it forever. And that question is this: what do we do with the people we disagree with, don't like, the people who are way over there on the complete other side of the fence than we are, the people we have nothing in common with and who, quite frankly, drive us nuts? Anyone ever asked that one before? Right? Yeah, put your hands up. We're so timid to be like, yes. Like, yeah, man, we've all asked it. What do we do with them? Right? And right away, all of you are thinking about them. You've all got someone very specific in mind. And so today I want to explore the answer to that question. What do we do with them? But before we get too deep, I want to really name something important. What do we do with them is a very different question than what do we do with the people who have abused and deeply hurt us. I want to talk about the people that we disagree with, that we have nothing in common with, that we would do anything but sit at a dinner table with, and not the people who have been violent to us, who have deeply hurt us in violent, traumatic, abusive ways. Well, there's definitely going to be some overlap in conversation, very different and very more nuanced conversation. And so I want to park that one way, way over there. We can come back to that a different day. But for today, I want to stick with our question of what do we do with the people that we disagree with, don't like, who are way over there, who are on the other side of the fence, who drive us bonkers, that we just don't want to sit down with and be in relationship with. And what I think this story can do is give us the big truth that we need to help us answer that one. And so let's go into the story. And I know it's a famous story. It's one that if you've been going to church long enough, you've heard too many times, and you've heard sermons about it too many times, because frankly, as a preacher, it's just one you have in your pocket. And when you don't have anything to say, you're like, oh, I'm going to do the prodigal, because it's easy. It's straightforward. And 9 times out of 10, you will get a sermon about God's forgiveness and God's compassion. And sure, true, that preaches. That's great. But I want to cut us off at the pass and let you know that that is not where we're going today. We're going to lean into the beauty of parables and let them have multiple meanings. We're going to lean into the space that they offer to say that they can mean more than one thing. And they're kind of trampolines that help us jump off into other kinds of conversations. And so, yes, it's about compassion and sure. Not today. It's not about that today. And I want to go down that road because, as one of my teachers pointed out, if you read the story, there's no wrong that gets committed. There's no slight, there's no error, there's no huge wrongdoing. The son, being like your typical 19-year-old kid, just goes up to his dad and says, "Hey, Dad, I want to go to Europe and backpack across it. I want to go write my own story. I want to figure out who I am. I don't know why I'm talking like this." And, and like, give me my money so I can go and do it. Right? He's being exactly how you would expect a kid to be. And the dad says, sure. The dad seemingly has no problem with this and says, sure, take your inheritance, go, play, have fun. And so the kid goes off and again does what every 19-year-old is going to do. He blows it. He spends all his money. He wastes all his resources. He makes a lot of bad decisions and does so in such a spectacular fashion. Where does he end up? Where does he find himself? He finds himself eating with pigs. And now we're going to pull over here because this is big and huge and kind of shapes the entire story. Because in first century Jewish consciousness, what was up with pigs? They were unclean, yes. They were unclean, which is this way of saying that if you ate pigs or associated with pigs, if you touched pigs, because they were seen as filthy and gross and poopy, essentially, right? That would make you unclean, which was this word they had that talked about your status with God and status with other people. It would make you be apart from God and community. And so if you became unclean, you'd have to do some rituals that would restore you back into relationship with God and with community. And usually when we hear this story, we're like, oh man, he ate with pigs. Like, oh, he's unclean, his status changed, like he's hit rock bottom, oh, what a fall from grace. And we kind of leave it there. And that's true, but it's actually way deeper and bigger than that. Because he didn't just touch a pig. He didn't just work with pigs. He ate with pigs. And in first century Jewish consciousness, what does that make him? It makes him a pig. According to the social concept called table fellowship, you are who you eat with. You are who you eat with. The whole world was kind of ordered and governed by who you would eat with and who you wouldn't eat with. This is why at the beginning of the story, Jesus is getting in trouble because he eats with the tax collectors and the prostitutes. He's breaking the table fellowship rules. He's saying that doesn't work that way. It doesn't matter who you eat with. And he's undoing the whole social order and therefore restoring and reordering the entire universe according to the people in power. He's messing with the whole social order by eating with the wrong people. And what's happening in this story of the prodigal, and what we see happening here, isn't a story about the son's status, but it's about his essence. By eating with the pigs, he's becoming a pig. He's now fundamentally different. He is now completely other. He is now untouchable. He is now unrelatable. He is now one of them. Are you with me? And so the kid, who is now a pig, he's eating with them. He's become one of them. But we're told he comes to his senses. which I think is just a way of realizing that, like, he's in bad shape. He's going to die if he stays here. And so he hatches a plan where he's going to go home, and he's basically going to beg to be allowed back into the house. Maybe I can be a slave. Maybe I can be a servant. Maybe I can be that thing underneath a servant. But at least if I go home, I'll be okay. Like, that's my ask. That's my goal. And so he does. He flies back home. He heads towards the house. His dad sees him, and he starts running down towards him. And before the son can really say anything, what happens? The father hugs him. The father kisses him. He gives him a ring. He gives him sandals. He gives him a robe, and he throws a huge party. And so the question, of course, is why? Because the real life ending, and I think if we're honest, the ending that we all want to happen, especially if we're the older son, the ending we all want is the son to show up and the dad would see that he's a pig. He's now other. He's now that. And he turns him away. He says, ew, gross. Like, I can't relate to you. Look who you've become. You're one of them now. I want nothing to do with you. Go exist somewhere over there. But that's not what happens. That's not what we get. We get the opposite of that. And so why the surprise ending? Why the twist? What is going on here? What act is actually taking place? Because again, I don't think this is about forgiveness, but rather it's about something bigger than forgiveness. It's about the thing maybe behind forgiveness. Because the divine act here, if we're going to see the Father as God, the divine act here isn't forgiveness. The divine act here is actually restoration. The act here isn't forgiving the son for something that he did wrong and therefore allowing him in. No. The act here is welcoming the son back to something he always was. This isn't a story of forgiveness. This is a story of radical welcome and restoration. Can you see the difference? The son comes home and he's given back something he never actually lost. It's not a story of perpetual forgiveness. It's a story of perpetual return, of how God always welcomes us home whenever we walk away. And now we can go all kinds of places with that. But at the heart of this story is this big honking truth that says when it comes to God and it comes to God's world, it begins and ends with belonging. Because the truth is that when it comes to God and God's world, everyone belongs. There is no such thing as other and them. There's only us. Yeah, there's only us. There's only us. And what we hear in this parable is the same thing we hear everywhere else in Jesus' teachings. That no matter who you are, what your story is, who you love, what you do, who you become, what your questions are, what your politics are, where you go, what you think, or who you eat with, no matter who you end up becoming, nothing separates you from the love of God. Nothing makes you unwelcome. Nothing makes you not belong. You are always in because you always belong. And this is what so many people just can't wrap their heads around. This is why the Pharisees and the leaders are freaking out. This is why Jesus got killed. Because of the scandal in here. It's why the older brother freaked out and got so frustrated. It's just not fair. There's no repentance needed. There's no conversion needed. There's no password required. There's no punishment given out. There's no consequence, it seems. He doesn't have to hustle for anything. He's just allowed back in. He's just restored back to who he was. He's just welcomed home as if nothing had ever happened. But this is the truth that we get at the very heart of our faith. Everyone is in because everyone belongs in God's world, and everyone belongs because everyone just belongs. There's no fine print, there's no asterisk, there's no footnote. Everyone just belongs. And let's just sit in that for a moment for two reasons. Let's sit with that because we always love to hear this when it's about ourselves. So like, oh, I belong. That's amazing. It's great. But I think we're more like the older brother than we like to give ourselves credit for. Because this is the truth that we're okay with accepting for ourselves. But when it comes to them, like totally other story, right? Then we want to be like the older brother, be like, no, not them though. They believe these things. They act like this. They wear these hats. They vote for this. How could we possibly allow them in? But also, let's sit with it for the second reason, because this gives us a really important vision for what God's world is like. Because if God's world does begin and end with belonging, if everyone already is in, what kind of world is it? It's a world of relationships. It's a world of connection. It's a world of community. It's a world of mutuality. It's a world of interdependence. It's a world of moving towards one another. It is a world where, despite our differences, despite our diversity, despite all the things that rub up and bump up against each other and make us nuts, despite all of that, it is a world where we coexist in peace and harmony. What we get here from Jesus is this vision of a world that's not about uniformity and total agreement and total alignment. What we get here from Jesus is not a world about converting and controlling and convincing and having power over and dominating others until everyone is on the same side, until everyone agrees, until everyone is on the same page. We don't get that. If you look at everything Jesus does, from who he eats with to the band of disciples he put together, it's not about uniformity and total agreement. It is about relating with people different than you. It is about creating ridiculous community full of people who aren't meant to be together. Because, and this is where we're going to get frustrated and begin to get nosebleeds. Because what happens when you relate? What happens when you move together? What happens when you actually move towards? You begin to understand. You begin to see. You begin to have empathy. Begin to have compassion. And God forbid you might actually begin to love. And through all of that, really hard, awkward, uncomfortable work of moving towards, something really beautiful begins to happen. Suddenly we begin to relate. Suddenly we begin to be friends. Suddenly we begin to be alongside one another. And slowly but surely, things begin to change and a whole new world begins to happen. Yeah, what the story tells us is that God's world does not begin with believing. It begins with belonging. It begins with moving towards one another, especially the people that we don't like, disagree with, or on the other side of the fence of, and who just drive us nuts. It's in that movement that we begin to experience God's world, because a world of love can't happen any other way. It's the only way a world of love happens, by actually being in relationship with each other. But to get there, to get to that world of love, to experience the life and world that comes with that. And here's where we're going to answer your question. You got to go to the party. You can't be the guy on the hill complaining and grumbling and resenting that someone else belongs, and you just stand there. What we do with the people that we don't like, the people we disagree with, the people who drive us nuts, we go to the party. You go to the party. As much as it sucks, as much as it's awkward and difficult and hard, you just go. You just lean in and learn to be in relationship with them. And you struggle to be in community with them, because that is how it happens. That is how it works. As Adam put it, you just do it. You just do it. You just move. You just step towards. Because the reality is that's what love does. It moves towards the other. And again, a super unsatisfying answer. Because the reality is there's not a rubric for this. There's not a metric for this. There's not a map for this. There's not a say this, do this, become this. All that Jesus gives us is you do it. You step towards them and you learn how to figure it out. Is it fun? Actually, yeah, it kind of is. Because once you see past the things that you disagree with, once you begin to hear the stories, once you put down your ego, things begin to happen. And so a few things, because I know you'll just come back to me with more questions. Here's what that doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you can't have boundaries. It doesn't mean you can't honor your own truth and experience and story as you honor their truth, experience, and story. Let's remember that being kind is different than being nice. And let's remember that loving someone does not mean approving or agreeing with someone. We'll get so caught up in those questions, we end up not doing the very thing that we're supposed to do, which is just moving towards, just doing the act of being in relationship. That's the answer. You just do it. The people at the soccer game, the people beside you, crazy Uncle Larry at dinner. You just relate. You just talk. You just get to know. And we trust and we hope in resurrection. We trust and hope that love will prevail and that God's world will rise up. And so this time is going to be for you. Knowing that's hard and courageous work. Knowing that is not easy, but really uncomfortable, but really fun. This time's going to be for you to find the courage to step forward and begin to create God's world. Understanding that the only person that can cut you off from God's world is you. And you do that by staying outside the party. You do that by giving in to your complaints and grumblings and discomforts. And you actually step forward. And so there's some candles in the back you can light as a prayer of courage. You can get a prayer in the back. There's some art in the back. All of that's meant to help you step forward. Or you can sing along with this song and use it as a way to trust that God is good and great and with us, making all things new, including how we relate to one another. And so my friends, may you struggle well, and may grace and peace be with you. Amen.